Marcus Williams never expected his life to change forever on a cold Tuesday morning in Afghanistan. The 28-year-old Army sergeant was leading a routine patrol through the dusty streets of Kandahar when his military dog, Rex, suddenly stopped walking. The German shepherd's ears perked up, and his nose twitched as he caught a scent that made him whine softly. Rex had been Marcus's partner for 3 years. The dog had saved countless lives by detecting bombs in dangerous situations. Marcus trusted Rex more than any human he knew. When Rex acted strange, Marcus always paid attention. This time was no different. The patrol had been checking abandoned buildings for enemy activity. The war had been going on for so long that many villages looked like ghost towns. Broken windows, crumbling walls, and empty streets told stories of families who had fled to safety. Marcus and his team were used to finding nothing but dust and memories in these places. But Rex was acting differently today. The dog pulled hard on his leash, dragging Marcus toward a partially destroyed house at the end of the street. The building looked like it had been hit by an explosion months ago. Half the roof was gone and the front door hung crooked on its hinges. "What is it, boy?" Marcus whispered, following his four-legged partner. Rex never got excited about empty buildings. Something was different about this place. Inside the house, broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. Torn curtains fluttered in the wind that came through the damaged walls. The smell of dust and decay filled the air. Rex kept pulling Marcus deeper into the house, past a kitchen with no stove, past a living room with no chairs. Then they reached a bedroom at the back of the house. Rex sat down and barked once. It was his signal. He had found something important. Marcus looked around the small room. A broken bed frame lay against one wall. Shattered glass from a window covered most of the floor. At first, he didn't see anything unusual. Then Rex walked to a corner where part of the ceiling had fallen down, creating a small pile of rubble. The dog began pawing at the debris. Marcus knelt down and started moving rocks and pieces of concrete. His hands worked quickly, following Rex's lead. After a few minutes, his fingers touched something that wasn't stone or wood. It felt like cloth. Marcus called to his teammates outside. "I need some help in here." 3 other soldiers came running into the house. They helped Marcus clear away more of the rubble. Slowly, they uncovered what Rex had found. It was a small backpack, dirty and torn, but still intact. The fabric was bright pink, the kind a young girl might carry to school. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Finding children's belongings in war zones always made him think of his own daughter back home in Texas. He opened the backpack carefully. Inside, he found school supplies that had survived the destruction. There were colored pencils, some notebooks with writing in a language he couldn't read, and a small stuffed animal that looked like it had been loved very much. At the bottom of the backpack, Marcus found something that made him stop breathing for a moment. It was a photograph, creased and dirty but still clear enough to see. The picture showed a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing next to a woman who was clearly her mother. They were both smiling, and the woman had her arm around the child's shoulders. Marcus stared at the photo for a long time. The little girl had dark hair and bright eyes that seemed full of life and happiness. The woman looked proud and loving as she held her daughter close. It was the kind of picture that families keep to remember happy moments. But something about the woman in the photo bothered Marcus. She looked familiar, though he couldn't figure out why. He had been in Afghanistan for 8 months and had met hundreds of local people. Maybe he had seen her face before during one of their missions. Rex whined softly and nudged Marcus's hand with his nose. The dog could sense that his partner was upset. Marcus petted Rex's head and whispered, "Good boy. You found something important." The other soldiers gathered around to look at the photograph. Sergeant Johnson, who had been in Afghanistan longer than Marcus, studied the woman's face carefully. "I think I've seen her before," he said quietly. "There was a woman who used to work as a translator for our unit about 6 months ago. She looked a lot like this." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If this woman had worked with American soldiers, where was she now? And more importantly, where was her little daughter? They searched the rest of the house but found nothing else. No other signs of the family who had once lived there. No clues about what had happened to them or where they had gone. The house had been empty for a long time, probably since the explosion that had damaged it so badly. Marcus carefully put the photograph back in the backpack, along with all the other items. He couldn't explain why, but he felt like he needed to keep these things safe. Maybe someday he could return them to the little girl if he ever found her. That night, back at the military base, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the photograph. He kept pulling it out of the backpack and staring at the faces of the mother and daughter. The woman's face seemed more familiar each time he looked at it, but he still couldn't remember where he might have seen her. Rex lay beside Marcus's cot, as he did every night. The dog seemed to understand that his partner was troubled. Usually, Rex would sleep soundly after a long day of patrol, but tonight he stayed awake, watching Marcus with concerned brown eyes. Marcus talked to Rex in the darkness of their shared tent. "What do you think happened to them, boy? That little girl in the picture, she looked so happy. Her mom looked like she would do anything to protect her." The photograph raised so many questions that Marcus couldn't answer. How had the backpack ended up buried under rubble in that destroyed house? Had the family escaped safely, or had something terrible happened to them? And why did the woman's face seem so familiar? Marcus decided he would ask around the base the next day. Maybe someone else would recognize the woman in the photograph. Maybe they could help him solve the mystery that Rex had uncovered in that abandoned house. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Marcus held the photograph close to his chest. He didn't know it yet, but this discovery would lead him down a path that would change everything he thought he knew about his mission in Afghanistan. The truth was far more complicated and heartbreaking than he could ever imagine. The next morning, Marcus woke up with the photograph still clutched in his hand. Rex was already awake, sitting patiently beside the cot as he did every morning, waiting for their day to begin. The German shepherd's tail wagged slightly when he saw Marcus open his eyes, but there was still concern in the dog's expression. Marcus sat up and looked at the photograph again in the bright morning light. The woman's face seemed even more familiar now, and it was starting to drive him crazy. He knew he had seen her somewhere before, but the memory stayed just out of reach, like trying to remember a dream after waking up. After breakfast, Marcus decided to visit the intelligence office on the base. If this woman had worked as a translator for American forces, there would be records of her employment. Maybe he could find out her name and what had happened to her. Captain Rodriguez, the intelligence officer, was a friendly man who had helped Marcus with information requests before. When Marcus showed him the photograph, Captain Rodriguez's expression changed immediately. He became very serious and asked Marcus to sit down. "Where did you find this?" Captain Rodriguez asked, studying the photograph carefully. Marcus explained about the patrol, about how Rex had led him to the abandoned house, and about finding the backpack buried under rubble. As he told the story, Captain Rodriguez's face grew darker and more troubled. "Her name was Amara Nasiri," Captain Rodriguez said finally. "She worked as a translator for our unit for about 8 months. She was one of the best we ever had. She spoke perfect English and helped us communicate with local families during our missions." Marcus felt a mix of relief and worry. At least now he knew who the woman was, but Captain Rodriguez's tone suggested that the story didn't have a happy ending. "What happened to her?" Marcus asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Captain Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a thick file from his desk drawer. "This is classified information, but since you found evidence related to her case, I think you need to know the truth." He opened the file and showed Marcus several documents. There were employment records, mission reports, and photographs of Amara working with different American military units. In every photo, she looked professional and dedicated to her job. "Amara was more than just a translator," Captain Rodriguez explained. "She was also providing us with intelligence about enemy activities in her village. She was risking her life to help American forces because she believed we were trying to make Afghanistan safer for families like hers." Marcus studied the photos of Amara more carefully. She was definitely the same woman from the family photograph he had found. But in these work photos, she looked more serious and worried than she had looked with her daughter. "She had a daughter named Layla," Captain Rodriguez continued, 8 years old. "Amara never brought her to the base, but she talked about her all the time. She said everything she did was to give Layla a better future." Marcus felt his heart sink. The little girl's name was Layla. Now she wasn't just a face in a photograph. She was a real person with a real name who had been loved by her mother. "About 6 months ago, Amara stopped showing up for work," Captain Rodriguez said. "At first, we thought maybe she was sick or dealing with a family emergency. But when she didn't come back after a week, we sent a team to check on her." The captain turned the page in the file and showed Marcus more photographs. These were crime scene photos, and they made Marcus's stomach turn. The house in the pictures was the same house where Rex had found the backpack, but these photos showed it before the explosion. We found evidence that enemy fighters had discovered Amara was working with us, Captain Rodriguez said quietly. They came to her house one night. There were signs of a struggle, but when our team arrived, the house was empty. No bodies, no signs of where Amara and Layla had gone. Marcus stared at the crime scene photos, trying to understand what had happened, so they might still be alive. Captain Rodriguez shook his head sadly. 2 days after we found the empty house, enemy fighters detonated a bomb inside it. They wanted to destroy any evidence of what had happened there. We think they took Amara and Layla somewhere else before they blew up the house. But why? Marcus asked. If they wanted to punish Amara for helping Americans, why not just kill them in the house? Because they wanted information, Captain Rodriguez replied. Amara knew a lot about our operations. She had access to sensitive information because of her work as a translator. They probably took her and her daughter to try to force her to reveal military secrets. Marcus felt sick. The idea of a mother and her young daughter being kidnapped and tortured was almost too horrible to think about. He looked down at Rex, who was lying quietly at his feet. The dog seemed to sense the heavy mood in the room. Have there been any leads since then? Marcus asked. Any sign of what happened to them? Captain Rodriguez closed the file and looked directly at Marcus. That's the hardest part of this story. About 3 months ago, we received intelligence from local sources that Amara had been killed. According to our informants, she refused to give up information about American operations, even after they tortured her for weeks. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. This brave woman had died protecting the same soldiers she had worked so hard to help. She had paid the ultimate price for her loyalty to the American mission in Afghanistan. What about Layla? Marcus asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. We don't know, Captain Rodriguez admitted. There have been no confirmed reports about what happened to her. Some sources say she was killed along with her mother. Others suggest she might have been sold to human traffickers or taken to a different part of the country. Marcus sat in silence, processing this terrible information. The happy little girl in the photograph might be dead, or she might be suffering somewhere alone and afraid, missing her mother. Why are you telling me all this? Marcus asked. If it's classified information, why share it with me? Captain Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. Because you and Rex found something that our investigation missed. That backpack was buried under rubble from the explosion. It means Layla had hidden it before the enemy fighters came to their house. Maybe she was trying to preserve her most precious belongings. Marcus looked down at the photograph again. Layla's bright, happy eyes stared back at him from the picture. She had been smart enough to hide her backpack before the worst night of her life began. There's something else, Captain Rodriguez said. The fact that you found that backpack gives us hope that there might be other evidence we missed. Maybe other clues about what really happened to Layla. Marcus felt a new sense of purpose forming in his chest. You want me to keep investigating? I want you to keep your eyes open, Captain Rodriguez replied. You and Rex have good instincts. If there are more answers to be found about what happened to Amara and Layla, you two might be the ones to find them. As Marcus left the intelligence office, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was no longer just a soldier on patrol. He was now part of a mission to discover the truth about a brave woman and her innocent daughter. Whatever had happened to Layla, Marcus was determined to find out. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus couldn't concentrate on anything except finding more clues about Layla's fate. Every patrol felt different now. Instead of just looking for enemy activity, he found himself studying the faces of children in every village they visited. Rex seemed to understand that their mission had changed, and the dog was more alert than ever. Marcus had started carrying Layla's photograph with him everywhere. During breaks between patrols, he would show it to local people and ask if they had seen the little girl. Most people were too afraid to talk to American soldiers, but a few older women would look at the photo with sad expressions and shake their heads. On a Thursday morning, Marcus and Rex were part of a team investigating reports of suspicious activity near a small village called Kala Inau. The village was about 30 miles from where they had found Layla's backpack. As they walked through the narrow streets, Rex suddenly became very excited. The dog pulled Marcus toward a small marketplace where local women were selling vegetables and bread. Rex's nose was working overtime and his tail was wagging in a way that Marcus had learned meant the dog had found something important. "What is it, boy?" Marcus whispered, letting Rex lead him through the crowd of people. Rex stopped in front of a vegetable stand run by an elderly woman who looked to be about 60 years old. She had kind eyes but a worried expression, and she kept glancing nervously at the American soldiers. When she saw Rex approaching, her face changed completely. She looked shocked and then frightened. Marcus noticed her reaction immediately. "Do you know this dog?" he asked in the few words of local language he had learned. The woman shook her head quickly and turned away, but Marcus could see she was lying. Rex was whining softly and pawing at the ground near her vegetable stand. The dog had definitely found something familiar. Marcus decided to try a different approach. He pulled out the photograph of Amara and Layla and showed it to the woman. "Have you seen this little girl?" The moment the woman saw the photograph, tears formed in her eyes. She looked around quickly to make sure no one else was watching, then motioned for Marcus to follow her away from the busy marketplace. She led Marcus and Rex to a small alley behind her vegetable stand. In broken English mixed with her local language, she began to tell Marcus a story that made his heart race with hope and fear. "This girl," the woman said, pointing at Layla in the photograph. "I know her. She came to my house 3 months ago. Very scared, very hungry." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "She was alive 3 months ago?" The woman nodded. "She walked for many days to reach our village. She was alone, no mother, no father. She told me bad men took her mother away." "What happened to her?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was pounding. The woman's expression became even more worried. "I wanted to help her. She stayed in my house for 2 weeks. She cried every night for her mother. She was so thin, so afraid of every sound." Rex was sitting quietly beside Marcus, but the dog's ears were pointed forward, and he was listening intently to every word the woman spoke. "But I could not keep her safe," the woman continued. "Other people in the village were afraid. They said if the bad men found out we were hiding her, they would hurt all of us." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. He understood that people were afraid, but the idea of abandoning a scared little girl made him furious. "What did you do?" "My brother has a truck. He drives to different cities to sell goods. I asked him to take her to Kabul, to find an orphanage where she would be safe." Marcus felt a mixture of hope and worry. If Layla had made it to Kabul, she might be safe in an orphanage. But Afghanistan's orphanages were often overcrowded and underfunded. Life there would be difficult for a traumatized 8-year-old girl. "Do you know which orphanage?" Marcus asked. The woman shook her head. "My brother said he would find a good place for her. But that was 3 months ago. I have not heard anything since then." Marcus thanked the woman and gave her some money for food. As they walked away from the village, he felt both hopeful and frustrated. Finally, they had proof that Layla had survived the attack on her home. She had been brave enough and smart enough to escape and find help. But now she was somewhere in Kabul, one of the largest cities in Afghanistan. Finding one little girl in a city of millions of people would be almost impossible, especially for an American soldier who couldn't move freely through civilian areas. That evening, Marcus called Captain Rodriguez on the military radio and told him about the conversation with the vegetable seller. Captain Rodriguez was excited by the news but also realistic about the challenges they faced. "Kabul has more than 20 orphanages," Captain Rodriguez explained. "Most of them don't keep good records, and they're not always cooperative with military requests for information. But this is the best lead we've had." "I want to go to Kabul," Marcus said. "I want to search for her myself." "That's not possible," Captain Rodriguez replied. "You're assigned to patrol duties here. But I can contact our intelligence team in Kabul and ask them to start checking orphanages." Marcus felt frustrated, but he understood military protocol. He couldn't just abandon his assigned duties to go searching for one little girl. No matter how much he wanted to help her, over the next few days, Captain Rodriguez called Marcus with updates from the Kabul investigation. The intelligence team had visited 5 orphanages and shown Layla's photograph to the staff at each location. So far, no one had recognized her. Marcus tried to stay patient, but every day that passed made him worry more about Layla's safety. Orphanages in Afghanistan were dangerous places for children. There were reports of abuse, neglect, and even trafficking of orphaned children to other countries. 1 week after their conversation with the vegetable seller, Marcus received news that changed everything. Captain Rodriguez called him to the intelligence office with an urgent expression on his face. "We found her." Captain Rodriguez said, as soon as Marcus walked in the door. Marcus felt his heart jump. Is she okay? Where is she? Captain Rodriguez's expression became serious. She's alive, but the situation is complicated. She's not in an orphanage. According to our sources, she's being held in a private home in Kabul by a family that's involved in human trafficking. Marcus felt anger and fear flooding through his body. They're going to sell her? It looks that way, Captain Rodriguez replied. Our informants say the family specializes in taking orphaned children and selling them to buyers in other countries. They've been holding Layla for several weeks, probably waiting for the right buyer. Marcus stood up from his chair. We have to get her out of there now. It's not that simple, Captain Rodriguez said. The house where she's being held is in a very dangerous part of Kabul. It's controlled by the same criminal network that killed her mother. If we send in a military team, they'll probably kill Layla before we can reach her. Marcus felt desperate. After all this time searching for Layla, they had finally found her, but she was in more danger than ever. The brave little girl who had survived her mother's death and walked for days to find safety was now trapped by criminals who saw her as nothing more than a product to be sold. There has to be something we can do, Marcus, said Captain Rodriguez, nodded slowly. There is, but it's dangerous and it's not official military business. Are you willing to risk everything to save this little girl? Marcus didn't hesitate for even a second. Yes, whatever it takes, Captain Rodriguez explained the plan. There was a network of Afghan civilians who worked secretly with American forces to rescue trafficking victims. They operated outside official military channels because they could move through dangerous areas without attracting attention. The network was led by a man named Hassan, who had lost his own daughter to human traffickers 5 years earlier. Hassan's team has been watching the house where they're holding Layla, Captain Rodriguez said. They've confirmed she's there, but they need help with the rescue operation. The traffickers are heavily armed and they have connections with enemy fighters. What kind of help? Marcus asked. They need someone with military training to help plan the rescue, someone who understands combat tactics and can handle weapons if things go wrong. But if you agree to help, you'll be operating without official military support. If something goes wrong, the army can't protect you. Marcus thought about his own daughter back home in Texas. She was about the same age as Layla, and the idea of her being held by criminals made him physically sick. He couldn't abandon Layla when he had the power to help save her. When do we start? Marcus asked. The next day, Marcus met Hassan at a safe house in a different part of Kandahar. Hassan was a thin man in his 40s with intelligent eyes and calloused hands. He spoke excellent English and had worked as an engineer before his daughter was kidnapped. I have been tracking this trafficking ring for 3 years, Hassan explained. They have taken more than 30 children from villages around Afghanistan. Most of these children are never seen again. Hassan showed Marcus photographs and maps of the house where Layla was being held. It was a 2-story building in a crowded neighborhood of Kabul. The traffickers had chosen the location carefully because it looked like an ordinary family home from the outside. There are always at least 4 armed guards in the house, Hassan said. They keep the children in locked rooms on the 2nd floor. Our informants say Layla is being kept with 2 other girls who were also taken from their families. Marcus studied the building plans carefully. The house had only 2 entrances and both were constantly guarded. The 2nd floor had small windows, but they were too high off the ground for a child to escape through. How do we get inside without getting the children killed? Marcus asked. Hassan smiled grimly. We don't go inside. We make them come outside. He explained the plan. Hassan's network had discovered that the trafficking ring was planning to move Layla and the other children to a new location in 2 days. They would be loaded into a truck at night and driven to a remote airfield where a plane would take them out of the country. We will intercept the truck before it reaches the airfield, Hassan said. It will be dark and they won't expect an attack on the road. If we can stop the truck and disable the guards quickly, we can rescue all the children without putting them in danger. Marcus liked this plan better than trying to assault the house. A nighttime ambush on a lonely road would give them the element of surprise and reduce the risk of civilian casualties. What about Rex? Marcus asked. He's my partner and he's good at detecting danger. Hassan looked surprised. You want to bring your military dog on a civilian rescue operation? Rex found the clues that led us to Layla in the first place, Marcus explained. He has good instincts about dangerous situations. If something goes wrong during the rescue, he could help keep us safe. Hassan agreed, and they spent the next day planning every detail of the operation. They studied maps of the route the truck would take, identified the best location for the ambush, and prepared the equipment they would need. Marcus felt nervous but determined as the day of the rescue approached. He had never participated in an unauthorized military operation before, but he couldn't abandon Layla when she was so close to being lost forever. On the night of the rescue, Marcus met Hassan and 4 other Afghan men at a checkpoint outside Kabul. They were all volunteers who had lost family members to human traffickers. They drove in 2 vehicles to the ambush location, a stretch of dark road between hills where the truck would have to slow down to navigate a sharp curve. Rex sat in the back seat beside Marcus, alert and ready for action. The dog seemed to understand that this night was different from their usual patrols. There was tension in the air that made everyone more focused and serious. They waited in the darkness for 3 hours before they saw the headlights of the trafficking truck approaching. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as the vehicle came closer. Somewhere inside that truck was the little girl whose photograph he had been carrying for weeks. Hassan gave the signal, and his men activated their plan. They had placed obstacles on the road that would force the truck to stop. As soon as the vehicle came to a halt, they would surround it and demand the release of the children. The truck slowed down as it approached the curve, just as they had expected. But something went wrong immediately. Instead of stopping when it hit the road obstacles, the truck driver gunned the engine and tried to crash through the blockade. The truck hit the obstacles hard and flipped over onto its side. Marcus heard the sound of breaking glass and twisting metal, followed by screaming voices from inside the vehicle. His heart sank as he realized the children might have been injured in the crash. "Move now," Hassan shouted, and everyone ran toward the overturned truck. Rex reached the vehicle first, barking loudly to alert Marcus about potential dangers. The dog could smell the fear and panic of everyone inside the truck, both the criminals and their victims. Marcus and Hassan's team quickly surrounded the truck. 2 of the traffickers crawled out of the cab, both injured but still dangerous. They were reaching for their weapons when Hassan's men disarmed them and tied their hands. The back of the truck had been converted into a prisoner transport, with metal cages to hold the kidnapped children. Marcus felt sick when he saw the conditions inside. The crash had damaged the cages, but he could see 3 small figures huddled together in the darkness. "Layla," Marcus called softly in English. "My name is Marcus. I'm an American soldier. I'm here to help you." One of the small figures looked up, and Marcus saw a face that matched the photograph he had been carrying. It was definitely Layla, but she looked much thinner and more frightened than in the happy picture with her mother. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked gently. Layla shook her head, but Marcus could see she was terrified. She had been through so much trauma that she probably didn't trust any adults, even ones who claimed to be helping her. Rex approached the damaged cage carefully and whined softly. Something about the dog's gentle manner seemed to calm Layla slightly. She reached through the bars and let Rex sniff her hand. Hassan's men worked quickly to free all 3 children from the damaged cages. Besides Layla, there was a 10-year-old boy named Ahmad and a 7-year-old girl named Zara. All 3 children were malnourished and scared, but they didn't appear to have serious injuries from the crash. As they led the children away from the overturned truck, Marcus felt a sense of accomplishment mixed with worry. They had successfully rescued Layla and the other children, but now they had to figure out what to do next. These 3 kids had no families left and nowhere safe to go. Marcus looked down at Layla, who was walking beside him with one hand resting on Rex's back. The dog seemed to understand that this little girl needed extra protection and comfort. After everything she had been through, Layla deserved a chance at a normal, safe life. But as they drove away from the scene of the rescue, Marcus realized their mission was far from over. Saving Layla from the traffickers was only the first step. Now they had to find a way to give her the kind of future her mother had died trying to protect. Back at Hassan's safe house in Kabul, Marcus watched as local women volunteers gently cared for the 3 rescued children. Layla, Ahmed, and Zara were given clean clothes, hot food, and medical attention. It was the first time in months that they had been treated with kindness instead of cruelty. Layla stayed close to Rex throughout the evening. The German shepherd seemed to understand that this little girl needed a friend, and he lay patiently beside her while she ate her first real meal in weeks. Sometimes she would whisper to the dog in her native language, as if telling him about all the terrible things she had experienced. Marcus felt his heart breaking as he watched her. Layla was trying to be brave, but he could see the fear and sadness in her eyes. She flinched every time someone moved too quickly or spoke too loudly. The trauma of watching her mother being taken away and then being kidnapped herself had left deep scars on her young mind. Hassan pulled Marcus aside to discuss what would happen next. "The other two children have relatives in different provinces who can take care of them," Hassan explained. "But Layla has no family left alive. Her father died in the war 3 years ago, and she has no aunts, uncles, or grandparents." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. "What are her options?" "The official option is to place her in a government orphanage," Hassan said. "But you've seen the conditions in those places. They're overcrowded, underfunded, and sometimes dangerous. A traumatized child like Layla would not receive the special care she needs." Marcus knew Hassan was right. Afghanistan's orphanages were barely able to provide basic food and shelter, let alone psychological support for children who had survived severe trauma. "What's the unofficial option?" Marcus asked. Hassan was quiet for a moment. "There are good families in other countries who want to adopt Afghan children. Families who can provide safety, education, and love. But the adoption process is complicated, especially during wartime." "How complicated?" "It takes months of paperwork, background checks, and legal procedures. During that time, Layla would have to stay somewhere safe. The trafficking ring we attacked tonight has connections throughout Afghanistan. If they find out she escaped, they'll try to take her again." Marcus looked across the room at Layla, who was now sleeping curled up next to Rex. The sight of this brave little girl finally able to rest peacefully made him more determined than ever to protect her. "I want to adopt her," Marcus said suddenly. Hassan looked surprised. "You want to take her back to America?" "Yes. My wife and I have been talking about adoption for years. We have a good home, stable jobs, and we understand what Layla has been through. She already trusts Rex, and dogs are great for helping children heal from trauma." Hassan smiled for the first time since Marcus had met him. That would be wonderful for her. But American adoptions of Afghan children are very rare. The process could take a year or more, and you would have to prove that you can provide for her needs. "I don't care how long it takes or how difficult it is," Marcus replied. "This little girl deserves a chance at a real family and a safe future. Her mother died protecting American soldiers. The least I can do is protect her daughter." The next morning, Marcus called his wife Sarah in Texas and explained the situation. Sarah had seen photos of Layla that Marcus had sent, and she had been following the rescue operation with a mixture of hope and worry. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked. "Adopting a child is a huge responsibility under normal circumstances. Adopting a traumatized war orphan will be even more challenging." "I'm absolutely sure," Marcus replied. "When I look at Layla, I see our own daughter. I see a little girl who needs parents who will love her and keep her safe. We can give her that." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, let's do it. I'll start researching the adoption process from this end. You focus on keeping her safe until we can bring her home." Over the next few weeks, Marcus split his time between his regular military duties and helping Hassan arrange temporary care for Layla. They found a safe house run by a trusted Afghan family who had experience caring for traumatized children. The family had 2 daughters of their own, and they welcomed Layla with open arms. Marcus visited Layla every few days, always bringing Rex with him. The dog had become Layla's emotional support, and she seemed more relaxed and happy when Rex was around. Slowly, she began to trust Marcus as well. She started learning English words from him, and sometimes she would even smile when he told her stories about America. The adoption paperwork was incredibly complex. Marcus had to provide financial records, medical exams, background checks, and character references. Sarah was doing the same work from Texas, dealing with American adoption agencies and immigration lawyers. The most difficult part was proving that Layla was truly an orphan with no living relatives. Afghan record-keeping had been disrupted by years of war, and many official documents had been lost or destroyed. Marcus had to track down witnesses who could testify about what had happened to Amara and confirm that Layla had no other family. Captain Rodriguez helped as much as he could within the limits of military regulations. He provided official documentation about Amara's work as a translator and her death at the hands of enemy fighters. He also wrote letters supporting Marcus's character and his ability to provide a good home for Layla. 3 months into the adoption process, Marcus received devastating news. His military unit was being rotated back to the United States in 6 weeks. He would have to leave Afghanistan before the adoption was complete, which meant leaving Layla behind in a war zone. Marcus felt panicked. He had promised Layla that he would keep her safe and bring her to America. The idea of abandoning her now when she was just starting to heal from her trauma was unbearable. Hassan tried to reassure him. The adoption process will continue even after you leave. Your wife can handle the American side of the paperwork, and I will make sure Layla stays safe until the process is complete. But Marcus knew how dangerous Afghanistan could be. The trafficking ring was still operating, and they would be looking for Layla. Political situations could change quickly, making international adoptions impossible. 100 things could go wrong if he wasn't there to protect her. 2 weeks before his scheduled departure, Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. He went to see Captain Rodriguez with a request that shocked his commanding officer. "I want to extend my deployment," Marcus said. "I want to stay in Afghanistan until Layla's adoption is complete." Captain Rodriguez stared at him in disbelief. "You want to extend your deployment?" "Marcus, you've been in a combat zone for 14 months. You're supposed to go home to your family." "Layla is my family now," Marcus replied. "I made a promise to her and to her mother's memory. I can't break that promise just because it's inconvenient." "The Army doesn't extend deployments for personal adoption cases," Captain Rodriguez said. "There's no precedent for this kind of request." Marcus had expected this response, but he wasn't ready to give up. "Then I'll resign from the Army and stay in Afghanistan as a civilian. I'll work with Hassan's organization to help rescue other trafficking victims, while I wait for Layla's adoption to be approved." Captain Rodriguez realized that Marcus was completely serious about this plan. "You would give up your military career for one little girl?" "Without hesitation," Marcus replied. "Some things are more important than careers." That evening, Marcus sat with Layla and Rex in the garden of the safe house. He tried to explain to her that he might have to leave soon, but that he would come back for her as soon as possible. Layla didn't understand all the English words, but she understood enough to realize that Marcus was talking about going away. Tears formed in her eyes, and she grabbed onto Marcus's arm. "No go," she said in broken English. "Stay, Layla." Marcus felt his heart breaking. This little girl had already lost everyone she had ever loved. The idea of leaving her even temporarily felt like another betrayal. Rex seemed to sense the emotional weight of the moment. The dog moved closer to Layla and rested his head in her lap, offering comfort in the way that only animals can. That night, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He would find a way to stay in Afghanistan, no matter what it cost him. Layla had already endured too much loss and abandonment. He wasn't going to add to her pain by leaving her behind. The next morning, Marcus submitted his resignation from the Army and applied for civilian contractor positions that would allow him to remain in Afghanistan. It was a huge risk that could affect his future career prospects, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Captain Rodriguez tried to talk him out of it one last time. "You're throwing away a promising military career for a child you've known for less than 6 months." Marcus looked his commanding officer directly in the eyes. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what matters most. Layla has already sacrificed enough. It's my turn to make a sacrifice for her." Marcus's decision to leave the Army and stay in Afghanistan as a civilian contractor created a storm of controversy among his fellow soldiers. Some thought he was making a heroic sacrifice for an innocent child. Others believed he was throwing away his career for someone who wasn't even his real daughter. But Marcus didn't care what other people thought. He had made his choice, and he was at peace with it. Rex seemed to approve of the decision, too. The dog had grown attached to Layla over the past few months, and he appeared relieved that they weren't going to abandon her. Marcus found work with a private security company that provided protection for humanitarian organizations operating in Afghanistan. The job paid well and allowed him to stay in the country legally, while Layla's adoption process continued. More importantly, it let him visit her regularly and monitor her safety. Layla's English improved rapidly during this time. Marcus brought her books and educational materials, and the Afghan family caring for her helped her practice reading and writing. She was an intelligent child who had been denied education during her time with the traffickers, but she was eager to learn. The adoption paperwork moved slowly through both Afghan and American bureaucratic systems. There were constant delays, requests for additional documentation, and interviews with various officials. Marcus began to understand why international adoptions could take years to complete. 6 months after Marcus had submitted his resignation from the Army, he received a phone call that changed everything. It was from an American immigration lawyer who had been working on Layla's case. "Mr. Williams," the lawyer said, "I have some difficult news. The Afghan government is reviewing all pending international adoptions. There's been pressure from local groups who believe Afghan children should stay in Afghanistan, even if they have no family left." Marcus felt his stomach drop. What does that mean for Layla's case? It means the process is being suspended indefinitely. They're not approving any new international adoptions until they complete their review, which could take years. Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. After all the time, effort, and sacrifice, they were being told that Layla might never be allowed to leave Afghanistan. The little girl who had already suffered so much would be trapped in a country where she had no family and constant danger. "Is there anything we can do?" Marcus asked. "We can keep fighting through official channels," the lawyer replied. "But I have to be honest with you. The political climate is changing, and international adoptions are becoming more difficult every year." That evening, Marcus met with Hassan to discuss their options. Hassan had become like a father figure to Layla during her time in the safe house, and he was just as devastated by the news as Marcus was. "There might be another way," Hassan said quietly, "but it would be dangerous and it would mean Layla could never return to Afghanistan." Marcus leaned forward. "What kind of way?" "Some families have been able to get their adopted children out of the country through unofficial channels. There are people who specialize in helping families reunite across international borders." Marcus understood what Hassan was suggesting. "You're talking about smuggling her out of the country." Hassan nodded reluctantly. "It's not legal, but sometimes it's the only option for families who are separated by politics and bureaucracy. The people who do this work are professionals who understand how to move children safely." Marcus felt torn. Everything in his military training told him to follow legal procedures and work within official systems. But his heart told him that Layla deserved a chance at safety and happiness, even if it meant breaking some rules. "How would it work?" Marcus asked. "There's a network that helps families cross borders safely. They would take Layla through Pakistan and then arrange for her to fly to America with false documents. Once she's in the United States, your wife could claim asylum for her as a war refugee." "What are the risks?" Hassan's expression grew serious. "If they're caught at the border, Layla could be sent back to Afghanistan and placed in a government institution. The people helping her could be arrested, and you and your wife could face legal consequences for using false documents." Marcus thought about Sarah back in Texas. She had been supportive of the adoption process, but would she be willing to participate in something that was technically illegal? Would she risk her own freedom to save a child she had never met? "I need to talk to my wife," Marcus said. That night, Marcus called Sarah and explained the situation. He told her about the suspension of international adoptions and Hassan's suggestion about unofficial border crossing. Sarah was quiet for a long time after Marcus finished explaining. Finally, she said, "If we do this and we get caught, we could both go to prison." "I know," Marcus replied, "but if we don't do this, Layla could spend the rest of her childhood in an Afghan orphanage or worse. She could be kidnapped by traffickers again." "What does your heart tell you to do?" Sarah asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. "My heart tells me that we have to save her, no matter what the cost. This little girl has already lost everything. We might be her only hope for a real family and a safe future." Sarah sighed deeply. "Then we'll do it. I'll start researching asylum procedures and preparing for her arrival. You work with Hassan to arrange the border crossing." 3 weeks later, everything was ready. Hassan had contacted his network of border guides who specialized in helping families reunite across international boundaries. They had experience moving children safely and knew how to avoid both Afghan border guards and Pakistani police. The night before Layla was supposed to leave, Marcus spent hours with her and Rex at the safe house. He tried to explain what was going to happen, but he was careful not to frighten her with details about the dangers involved. "Tomorrow you're going to take a trip," Marcus told her in simple English. "You're going to go to America to meet my wife Sarah. She's going to be your new mother." Layla looked confused and scared. You come too? Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. I can't come with you on the trip, but I'll meet you in America as soon as I can. I promise, Layla started crying. She had been abandoned by so many adults in her short life that the idea of Marcus sending her away with strangers was terrifying. Rex seemed to understand the emotional weight of the moment. The dog moved close to Layla and let her bury her face in his fur while she cried. Rex come? Layla asked hopefully. Marcus felt his heart breaking. Rex was a military working dog who belonged to the army. There was no way for the dog to leave Afghanistan and join Layla in America. Rex has to stay here, Marcus said gently. But when you get to America, we'll find you a new dog who can be your friend. Layla cried harder, realizing that she was going to lose both Marcus and Rex at the same time. It seemed impossible that this little girl, who had already endured so much loss, would have to face even more separation. Marcus held her close and made her a promise that he hoped he could keep. I will find a way to bring you and Rex together again. I don't know how or when, but I promise I'll make it happen. The next morning, as Hassan's border guides prepared to take Layla on the most dangerous journey of her young life, Marcus realized that their story was far from over. Getting Layla to America safely would be just the beginning of a new chapter in all their lives. The border crossing took 3 days of walking through mountain paths that were barely visible to untrained eyes. Layla traveled with 2 experienced guides who had helped dozens of families reunite across the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. They carried her when she got tired and shared their food and water with her along the way. Marcus waited anxiously for news at the safe house in Kabul. Hassan had contacts along the border, route who would send coded messages if there were any problems. For 3 days, Marcus heard nothing. He barely slept and couldn't concentrate on anything except wondering if Layla was safe. On the 4th day, Hassan received a message that made both men smile with relief. Layla had successfully crossed into Pakistan and was staying with a trusted family in Islamabad while they arranged her flight to America. 2 weeks later, Marcus received a phone call from Sarah that he would never forget. She's here, Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. Layla is safe in Texas. Marcus felt tears of joy and relief flowing down his face. How is she? Is she okay? She's scared and confused, but she's healthy, Sarah replied. She keeps asking for you and Rex. She has a photograph of you and the dog that she carries everywhere. Marcus felt proud that Layla had made it through such a dangerous journey, but he also felt guilty that he wasn't there to help her adjust to her new life. The transition to America would be difficult for a child who had experienced so much trauma. What's she doing now? Marcus asked. She's sleeping in our guest room. We set up a bed for her with extra blankets because she seems to like feeling safe and enclosed. She ate 3 full meals today, which the doctor says is normal for children who have experienced food insecurity. Over the next few months, Marcus stayed in regular contact with Sarah and Layla through video calls. He watched as Layla slowly began to adapt to life in America. She started attending school, learned to ride a bicycle, and made friends with neighborhood children. But Marcus could see that she was still struggling with the trauma of everything she had experienced. She had nightmares about her mother's death, and often asked when Marcus and Rex would come to America. Sarah had found a good therapist who specialized in helping refugee children, but healing would take time. Marcus knew he needed to get back to America as soon as possible. Layla needed stability and the presence of the people she trusted most. But leaving Afghanistan meant giving up his job and finding new employment in the United States. After 8 months of working as a civilian contractor, Marcus made the decision to return home. He had saved enough money to support his family while he looked for work in Texas, and Layla's emotional needs were more important than his career concerns. The hardest part of leaving Afghanistan was saying goodbye to Rex. The German Shepherd had been Marcus's partner for more than 2 years, and the dog had played a crucial role in finding and saving Layla. Rex would remain in Afghanistan with a new military handler, continuing the important work of detecting explosives and keeping soldiers safe. Take care of yourself, boy, Marcus said as he petted Rex one final time. You saved a little girl's life. That's something to be proud of. Rex seemed to understand that this was goodbye. The dog whined softly and rested his head against Marcus's leg, as if he was also sad about their separation. When Marcus finally arrived in Texas, Layla ran to him with tears in her eyes. She had grown taller during their months apart, and her English had improved dramatically, but she was still the same brave little girl he had rescued from traffickers. "Where, Rex?" she asked, looking around the airport for the German shepherd. Marcus knelt down to her level and explained that Rex had to stay in Afghanistan to help other soldiers. Layla cried when she realized that her canine friend wasn't coming home with them, but she seemed to understand that some separations were necessary. Over the following months, Marcus watched Layla transform from a traumatized war orphan into a happy, healthy American child. She excelled in school, made close friends, and began to think of Texas as her real home. The nightmares became less frequent, and she started talking about her future dreams and ambitions, but she never forgot about her mother or about Rex. Every night before bed, she would look at the photograph of Amara and tell her mother about her day in a mixture of English and her native language. She also kept a picture of Rex on her bedside table, and often asked Marcus to tell her stories about their adventures together in Afghanistan. 2 years after Layla arrived in America, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from Captain Rodriguez. "I have some news about Rex," the captain said. "He's being retired from military service due to age and some minor injuries. Normally, retired military dogs stay with their handlers or are adopted by military families, but Rex has been refusing to work with his new handler. He seems depressed and isn't performing his duties effectively." Marcus felt his heart race. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you're interested, we might be able to arrange for Rex to be retired to your family. It would be unusual, but given the special circumstances of your case and Rex's attachment to you, we might be able to make it happen." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. The possibility of reuniting Layla with Rex seemed too good to be true. 3 months later, Marcus and Layla drove to a military base in San Antonio to pick up Rex. When the German shepherd saw them approaching, he began barking with excitement and wagging his tail so hard that his entire body was shaking. Layla ran to Rex and threw her arms around his neck. "Rex, Rex! You come home." The dog licked her face and whined with happiness, as if he couldn't believe they were finally together again. It was a reunion that brought tears to the eyes of everyone who witnessed it. That evening, as Marcus tucked Layla into bed with Rex lying on the floor beside her, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Marcus," she said in perfect English, "my mother said I was never her daughter because I was too brave and strong for a little girl. She said I was like a soldier." Marcus felt confused. "Layla, your mother loved you very much. She would never say you weren't her daughter." Layla smiled and shook her head. No, you don't understand. She said I was never just her daughter. She said I was her daughter and her hero. She said I was the bravest person she ever knew." Marcus finally understood. Amara had been telling Layla that she was more than just a child. She was a survivor, a fighter, someone who could overcome any challenge. "Your mother was right," Marcus said softly. "You are the bravest person I've ever known, too." As Layla drifted off to sleep with one hand resting on Rex's fur, Marcus realized that their journey together was complete. They had started as strangers brought together by tragedy and war. Now they were a real family bound together by love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds that form when people choose to protect each other against all odds. The little girl who had lost everything had found a new home. The soldier who had risked everything had found a new purpose. And the dog who had started it all by finding a buried backpack was exactly where he belonged, protecting the people he loved most.